Welcome back to the First Year Pro Series. I'm your host, Tacy, and today we're going to be interviewing yet another outstanding athlete who has just gone pro in the last year. So we're going to recap the season, hear how he got to where he is, and what's coming next. So let me introduce you to Jake Bamforth, and let's get started. So welcome, Jake, for the First Year Pro Series. Going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself.
Cool. My name's Jake Bamforth. It's good to meet you, Zach. I live out in Fort Collins, Colorado. I've been racing tri coming up on 5 years. My background was in running all through elementary, middle, and high. We can talk about that more. But yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Right now I'm at CSU, Colorado State University. So finish up my master's in public health and enjoying racing collegiate right now. I know it's probably a little different than most first year pros in triathlon, but trying to just get the most out of this collegiate program as I can. I love, the college atmosphere of racing tri on a team. So it's been a lot of fun the past couple of years.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're actually the first pro that I've had on the series so far that is still racing at a collegiate level. So I think it'll be really interesting to kind of get that perspective and dynamic as well. So you qualified for your pro card back in 2020 and had your first full race season in 2021. Let's jump into that really quick. Especially your qualifying race.
Sure. Yeah, it was actually 2021 I qualified, and then first year 2022. The race I did it at was in Utah, St. George, and blanking on the name. I think it was like super sprint weekend at a state park in St. George. Super fun draft legal race. I really do love the draft legal racing. When I was getting into cycling, I raced a lot of crit races and was racing with the University of South Florida cycling team down in Tampa. So I just enjoyed kind of a little different than triathlon bike racing, but just loved the crit style in Florida. So
yeah, so you came from more cycling background, doing a lot more shorter distance races, doing some crit cycling before moving into triathlon.
Kinda, it was at the same time. I was doing tri, but was just around a bunch of cyclists, so naturally got sucked into the whole crit racing scene in Florida.
So how did you make the decision between kind of sticking with the crit racing and cycling versus going in on triathlon?
Well, I was definitely still tri training, and I think that was kind of the whole goal all along. But when I was in Florida at the University of South Florida, we didn't have a triathlon team, so I wasn't really around other, young triathletes in college, and wanted to just be around young people training. So naturally, it was crit racing.
Yeah, it's always easier to train when you got people to work out with, train with, and push you to that next level. So glad that you had that going for you. So you said your qualifying race was a super sprint. That was your qualifying race.
It was actually a sprint. So
just a sprint.
I think the first day we did a super sprint. Yeah, so it was back to back. A lot of these they call them EDRs, elite developmental race. They're back to back Saturday, Sunday races, and typically everyone in them does both days. You get 2 shots at nabbing the pro card, but day 1 was a super sprint, and I missed that by 1 position, grabbing qualifying there. But day 2 was the sprint, and I just felt like that would suit me better anyway, being a little bit longer. The super sprint's pretty short, and it was still a fun race, but did well at the sprint the next day and ended up winning it. So
that's awesome.
Qualifying race.
If you don't mind sharing just the distances for those 2 different events, and then also kind of go into some details of how that race went for you. Did you were going for your pro card in that race? Had you tried for it before? How did you know that was going to be your race for it?
I mean, in some ways, I feel like you know, like you're fit, but you just don't know what's going to happen. And I think that's like the fun in bike racing and draft legal racing, because it's a very complex, you know, discipline of triathlon, and a lot can happen. So um, the distances on those races, super sprint was like a 350-meter swim, maybe.
So short.
I know it's pretty quick, maybe 5 minutes in the water.
Oh my god.
Yeah, not sure on the bike distance exactly, maybe like 8 miles. I think it was like 20K for the sprint, but then we did like only 2 of the 3 loops. And then pretty short run. It was like a mile.
That's so
Maybe,
short.
yeah, maybe a mile and some change, and
Yeah.
very short. It was quick. I mean, it felt like a 25, 30-minute triathlon.
Yeah, that was basically just a workout at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So the sprint distance the next day was just typical sprint distance: 750 swim, 20K bike, and then 5K run.
Cool. That's awesome. And you said that was
Yeah,
the one that you won.
correct. Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Congrats. How did and so
Yeah,
for
I'd
the
love
rest
to.
of the
I can
season?
share details of that race and walk you through it.
Yeah,
It's
I'd
definitely a
love to
fun,
hear.
like, memorable race. Go ahead. I'm sorry. You broke
Oh,
up a
there
little
was
bit.
just a little bit of lag there. Yeah, I'd love to hear some more about that race.
Yeah, for sure. So swimming never was like my background. Never swam in high school or anything. Got into it in 2018 after I did my first race. Um, so so it, it's always kind of been my weak point when it comes to like draft legal racing, with a bunch of young guys that have like such a strong swim background, which I don't, but I think it's come a long way over the years, just working at it and being consistent. So was had a great swim and came out, within 20 seconds of the lead guys. And it ended up clumping up into like a group of maybe 8 of us, the lead group on the day. And I think it was the beginning of the second lap. And it's like this technical section that went around this little campground loop. Just noticed this guy I'm familiar racing with, my buddy Brandon, who used to go to CU Boulder. I had raced him in some collegiate races. I knew how strong he is. He's beaten me in a lot of non-draft racing, and he rolled off the front and had a little bit of a gap, and I was kind of sitting in the back at the time and just like jumped across and used the technical section, just opened up a gap, and then kind of rolled up to him and went right around and took a strong like pull. And we looked back and we're like, okay, we have like a 15-10 second gap at this point. Like, let's ride, And we had basically a little more than a lap and a half to go, and held maybe a 15-second gap going into T2, and then just held it for the run.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I've never actually had any experience with draft legal races. That's just, to me, seems like a whole different realm. And you mentioned that swimming wasn't your strong suit, but I can imagine that, coming out of the water and being with that front pack, especially in a draft legal race, is even more important. So, you said you came out with like a 20-second gap there. How easy, how difficult was it to make up that gap to catch back up with that lead group?
I think like the leaders was just like a group of 2, and then I was kind of a little further back with like a group of 6, so we ended up catching them pretty quickly. It just kind of nature of it,
Yeah.
6 versus 2, we're gonna close the gap fairly quickly, and I don't know, maybe the guys behind were super motivated to get up there. So
Well, it sounded like during that race when you that 6 versus 2, you and your buddy kind of split that going the other direction and took off from him. So looks like you can go the other way too.
yeah, for sure. I know like sometimes you can kind of read the group and just tell like, okay, these guys are taking, these turns a little slower, and you know, just having that background of like flying through turns and crit races, whatnot in Florida, like I just felt very comfortable on that course, and it was a fairly technical draft legal course. So I think it just suited, having a group of 2 guys that kind of knew how to take the turns, and really sending it through everything worked out to our advantage. But yeah, I was just thankful it all worked out. I know like on the run, it was like just running. I don't want to say scared, but like I was just like running to stay
Yeah.
where I was. And there's some fast guys in the field behind. So it was definitely like a nerve wracking run. But I mean, that's kind of what, you
You were
live
the
for,
rabbit.
being at the front
You
of
were
the
you were
race.
getting
It's
chased
fun.
down.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
for sure. It was a good time though.
Yeah. Well, again, congrats on that being your qualifying race. So, how did the rest of that season go for you when once you knew you qualified? How did the rest of the season look? And then kind of leading up to your first, when did you actually take the pro card to start racing?
Yeah, that race was in October, like Halloween, so
Okay.
very end of the year. It was the last race I did in 2021. The week before was a Pumpkin Man triathlon in Las Vegas, and it was our last collegiate race of the season. So pretty much just trained all year, all winter, and the focus was collegiate nationals that spring, which isn't a pro race, but like I was saying, I'm trying to get the most out of this collegiate program. I feel like professional racing will always be there, and I know there's like younger guys that are just going to focus on that, but I think like club sports at the collegiate level is something you only get to do once. So
Right.
I'm trying to get the most out of it while I can. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my focus this year as well. We're prepping for collegiate nationals in April, and
Okay.
that'll be my last one. So
Collegiate Nationals in April will be the last collegiate
first
race.
professional race I did wasn't until August.
Oh, there was just a lag overlap there. But yeah,
I'm
your
sorry, I
first
lost you.
professional race.
It was in Boulder 70.3 in August. And yeah, that's the only professional race I've done so far. I haven't done a whole pro racing since at this point it's just been, focusing on collegiate racing and just keep on developing.
Yeah, so you have 3 years with that first pro card. Once you get your pro card, you have 3 years with that before you have to requalify for it. Is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. So you got your pro card and you're like, I'll come back to this later. Let me just finish up this collegiate stuff right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I wanted I want to have that experience and race at a higher level. And, I'm confident, I'll be able to requalify, if I keep pursuing triathlon. But yeah, ended up taking it and wanted to race Boulder 70.3.
Yeah, so Boulder 70.3. I mean, that sounds like it, that the 70.3 is my main distance, which I know that the training for that versus, sprint training or even Olympic training, the training is very different for that. So what did you have to do to adjust so that you were able to get ready for that, first pro race that was at a little bit of a longer distance?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like too much different. Like in my opinion, I feel like the jump from 70.3 to like the full distance is like pretty substantial. But I feel as though the guys at the upper end of Olympic and draft legal sprints are putting in well enough volume to jump into a 70.3. I would say it's definitely more like cycling focused, so more like long aerobic rides on the bike. But as far as like swim and run training, it's pretty similar.
Interesting. Yeah, I would think that the jump from the sprints and Olympic distance up to 70.3 would be pretty different than 70.3 to full. Because I've done a couple fulls, and I know that with my training, I mean, I definitely added a lot more load in, but it was mostly on like those long rides and long runs, whereas most of my other workouts kind of stayed relatively similar. Whereas I would think that with, especially with the shorter distances, you'd have a lot more speed work involved on that front.
Yeah, for sure. I think you definitely do need the speed work, but I think like it all starts with like a solid base. You know what I mean? Like the guys that are, the fastest at the short stuff, they have such a big base that,
Yeah.
they can hop in some 70.3s
Yeah.
and do that distance and be very successful.
Yeah, that makes
Like
sense.
right now, I mean, sprint and Olympic, like non-draft and draft. So I feel as though like a 70.3 is not out of the question, if I want to hop in one over the summer.
Right. Well, let's go into the Boulder 70.3 for just a couple minutes here. How did that go for you? How was it, compared to what the racing you had done before, racing in that pro field?
Yeah, for sure. So I know like coming into the race, I wasn't feeling like at my top end. And I know working over summer just didn't train as much as I would have liked to in comparison to the school year. Um, I know like my swim fitness was relatively good, but overall, like the bike I knew would be my Achilles heel, especially among, guys that are training 30 hours a week, whatnot. I was only able to train 10 to 15 hours a week, but nonetheless, like the swim went pretty well. I think I came out of the water in like ninth place or so.
Okay.
There
For
were a
not
few
having a
like
swim
small
background,
groups
that's
of like
pretty good.
two at yeah, I mean, like I said, it's kind of been my focus coming into try, just knowing I don't have the swim background. So, I focus on it quite a bit, swimming pretty much 6 days a week, most weeks. Um, but yeah, swim went well. And then on the bike, it was definitely tough. I felt like I was by myself most of the day. So, I mean, that's like I said, an area to work on and improve. But felt like I rode strong relative to the fitness I was at. And then the run was just brutal. It was pretty hot. And I think like again, not having that bike fitness I need to compete at that level, it doesn't lend itself to go ahead and run well,
Right.
off weak bike legs. But hey, it's still an area to improve on.
Yeah. So definitely targeting some areas to improve there for it sounds like mostly just getting more volume in the legs and in the training schedule. But how did you feel about how the race itself went? And like just that general feeling of it and like the difference of it compared to like racing as an age group, like what stood out to you the most for that?
It's hard to say because there were so many firsts on that day.
Okay.
Like first professional race, and also my first 70.3.
Yep.
So it was funny. Like a few buddies that were in the pro field with me, they were like, "You're crazy! Like you got a lot of balls to do your first 70.3 at the professional race at altitude in Boulder." I was like,
Yeah.
why not? It's like in my backyard. It's an hour drive. I get to sleep in my own bed. It just seemed like an easy, first pro race to hop in. And I just, in some way, I was just looking for the experience and it would be
Right.
fun. But going into it, I knew like it was going to be rough. I'm obviously not contending,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, still good experience. And
Yeah.
I think relative to how much I was able to train with like working, 30 to 40 hour weeks all summer, like I was happy with it. But hey, I mean, it is what it is. And first pro race, just wanted to hop in, see how it went.
Yeah, well, you got your pro card. You did a pro race. We're gonna step it back to do well. I guess not necessarily step it back, but focusing on the collegiate level races for a little bit. So I do want to step it back just a little to go into your background, and then we'll kind of circle back around to go into a little bit more about collegiate racing. And you said you're in school as well, so what it takes to find that balance to compete. So yeah, let's jump back a bit and go into your background. A little bit of like athletics growing up, and then especially how you got into triathlon.
Yeah, sure. Um, so I've been running since I was real little kid, like my dad. He's a youth cross country coach, and he's also a race director. He puts on about 75Ks a year, a marathon, few halves, few 10Ks.
Oh my god.
This is in Southern Delaware, so that's kind of the family business. Like, mom helps with like pre-registration. Like me and my younger brother, we would go set up the races with my dad as kids. So I feel as though I've been around like a running community my whole life. So it just always felt natural to, jump in the races and run. Was running cross country starting in like first or second grade, and then ran cross, and then all through high school, and then started like running track, I guess, in middle school and high school as well. But yeah, I mean, high school running was definitely super fun and enjoyed it. But I do remember like at the tail end of it all, like definitely feeling burnt out and had several like overuse injuries. Just it's like the tale of the runner, you hear it so often of overuse injuries and whatnot. So I do, like, at the end of high school running, I was just kind of over it and had a pretty good senior year cross country season where I was really proud that I finished the season strong, had a great conference and state meet in Delaware. I should say I'm from Southern Delaware, Lewis and Rehoboth area at the beaches.
Okay.
So I was just like very happy with how that went. And then just kind of wanted to step away from running and go to college and enjoy it. So I was headed down to Tampa, Florida, where I did my undergraduate, went to a small community college down there for 3 years, and then 2 years at the University of South Florida. And for the first like 3 years of being in school, I did not run or do anything athletic at all.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's funny, like just talking to a lot of other young guys my age that are racing at a high level of triathlon, like they had a very linear progression of like high school, like standout onto, either high school or college running, college swimming, and into tri. But, I didn't do anything athletic other than skateboarding for 3 years. And I know,
well, clearly you didn't lose too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think like coming back, I was definitely like out of shape, like
right.
We're hopping in like a local 5K at the Tampa Buccaneers Stadium, and probably ran like just under 20 minutes, like some not very quick time compared to, running like high 16s in high school. And I just knew like I didn't want to just run anymore. I just felt like, this is fun, but I can't just run. I was actually doing that race as a little bit of rehab for an ankle injury. I had broken my ankle in Florida skateboarding and just wanted to get back in shape. So I decided to jump in the race. And then, yeah, from there, I was like, what else could I do other than just road racing? I didn't really know anything about swimming, never swam on a team competitively, but knew my dad had a bike. So I asked him if he would send it down to me. And he did, of course. And kind of the rest is history. I started riding a bunch, and then was like, oh, okay, I've got 2 of these sports down, biking and running. Like, let me do a triathlon and I'll try it. It was actually a friend that said he was going to do a try, and I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, you won't do it too? And I was like, I will, like, whatever. So I signed up, and of course he never actually signed up and ended up doing it. But of course I signed up. So I was like, I'm going to stay in it, whatever, like might as well. And I think I went to the beach like to swim a few times before. It was only a handful, but like I knew how to swim because I grew up in Delaware at the beaches. So like swimming and surfing was just natural being in the water. But, as far as like proper stroke technique, whatnot, I had never, swam on a team and had any like really formal swim team instruction. So did that race and was like super slow in the swim, probably like a 15 minutes for like a sprint distance swim, like the 750, and then just got out on the bike. Was having so much fun, like flying by people because I'd been riding that whole spring. That race was actually St. Anthony's. I'm sure some people are familiar with it. It's one of the few like pro field Olympic distance non-draft races left in the US, which is pretty cool. And then did pretty well in the run and just had this feeling of like, this is something I can chase. And I have so much like room for improvement. And, being so new to cycling and swimming, I was hooked right away and knew tri is something I wanted to keep chasing.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's funny that in that story, you pretty much nailed three major tropes in there. One being, oh, I was a runner and I wanted to do something more. Or I was a cyclist, having that single sport and just getting burnt out and being like, you know what? Like, I want to do more than just this one thing. So let me try a triathlon. Then the second part being, oh, my friend told me that I should try this. So I figured, why not? Like, let me jump into a race and see how it goes. And then the third one is, after my first race, I was hooked. those are, I think, like three of the biggest tropes in triathlon that come up. The funny thing that you mentioned is that one of the other pros I had on here had something similar with the signing, like of having a buddy sign him up for a race, and then his buddy didn't do it either. It's like, what's going on with that
one? That's so funny. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a common theme. Like friend gets you to do a try and you're hooked,
Yeah.
It was, definitely like unexpected, never, anticipated like getting into tri. And I think like, just having the running background made it, I don't know. It just seemed like a super fun thing to pursue. And at that point, like living in Florida, I wasn't like super thrilled I didn't know exactly what I was gonna, spend my time doing. I was skateboarding a bunch, which is a lifetime hobby of mine, but I just knew I wanted something else and kind of missed that, I guess, competitive edge that, I got from like high school running and whatnot. So it just felt like the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's awesome. So once you were hooked on triathlon, you said you've been in the sport for about 5 years now. What was the point when you realized like, oh, hey, I could be really good at this, or like I could be getting my pro card? Was there any like moment, or was it sort of from the get-go you just like had this goal to chase down?
Yeah, I don't know if like the idea of like racing professional, when that came up exactly, but I think it was just like the desire to do something and do it well, because like being on a talented high school team, like I definitely loved racing well, and we had a lot of guys that we all worked really hard, and I sort of was just chasing that for a while. I know it was my second race I did, so that first race at St. Anthony's, I was maybe like 20th, which is fine, but I knew like I had basically zero swim training prior to that race. And then right after that, I joined a master's group in Clearwater, Florida, like the next week, and then went from not swimming at all in a pool to swimming 3 days a week with a master's group, and was like getting pretty fit swimming like relatively quickly for not having a swim background. And then the next race I did, I won. I either got second or won, and it was a series in Fort DeSoto, which is south of St. Petersburg and Clearwater in Tampa Bay. And it was like 3 different races. I won 2 of them, and I know I got second in another. So pretty much right away, I was like, okay, this is something I could, be pretty good at. And I don't think the idea of like racing pro was on my mind yet, but
yeah, you definitely stepped up.
I knew
real
like
quick there.
Yeah, for sure. It was, relatively like quick success. I think like in part it has to do with having the engine of running for so many years and like youth and high school and whatnot. But it was just also like the point in my life where, you know, I was hanging out with a different friend group, like skateboarding and whatnot, and wanted to get away from that. And then just opened up this like whole new world of, you know, like living healthy. And I was just pretty much all in that aspect of just trying to do everything right. And, you know, I've definitely like settled down in that sense. And I'm at like such a good place at this point, you know, with like a strong group of friends out in Colorado and, you know, having a good balance of try and work and everything. But
Right.
yeah, at that time, like I was just like all in on trying to be the best triathlete I could be.
Yeah, that's awesome. What I guess what are some of the biggest changes that you've made? We're gonna jump forward a little bit here. Yeah, what are some of the biggest changes that you've made, like since getting your pro card, since being you know, a little bit more competitive? You know, whether that's you know, training, your work-life balance, because you're also you know, getting your master's, you said. So you know, that's a lot of things to try to balance. How does that work out for you? Like, what do you do to keep yourself sane and not burning out?
I don't know. I think like to kind of touch on that note, like when I started, I was like definitely all in trying to do everything I could, like eat healthy, you know, just learning and, you know, absorbing everything I could about, you know, try training and to be the best I could. Um, I think like now I'm definitely lighter on myself and obviously like take the training seriously, but you know, having some other goals like outside of try is obviously important, you know, like working towards my master's in public health is something, you know, I'm passionate about. And, you know, having a job in public health and ideally like if it allows me to keep training, like that's great, you know what I mean? But when I moved to Colorado, like one of my main goals was just to have like a good sense of community. Growing up in Delaware, it's a very small town, like at the beach area. So everyone knows each other in the running community. And I was definitely looking for that in terms of like the tri community out in Colorado. And I feel like in Fort Collins, it's like kind of secret is it's just the perfect size town. And fingers crossed it doesn't get any bigger. You know what I mean? Like it's got everything you need and you know nothing more. But yeah, I just wanted that sense of community here in Fort Collins, and I've been fortunate enough to find that. So I think that's like allowed me to, I guess, sustain, you know, the train workload as well as like the school work life balance.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you mentioned that you know, your focus is on having that balance, but you know, after you got your pro card, did you really change too much, or did you just like did you add more hours in while you're training? Did you change your diet at all after that? You know, like did you have any like really specific changes that you had, or did you kind of just like keep carrying on and doing your thing?
Yeah, really nothing changed. Like
Nothing changed.
I feel as though, yeah, I mean, I've been working with the same coach, John Mason, who's coach of CSU triathlon, and you know he's been guiding me throughout this whole process. So you know when I got out here to Fort Collins in the fall of 2020, like I knew what worked because you know I've been with him for so long,
Right.
and you know after him coaching me for a year, like we were able to achieve some big things, and you know we're still working together. So I don't really feel a need to change it. I think like over time, you know, I've just like found ways to add more volume. And
Right.
I think that's like the big, you know, that's obviously like more volume is going to lead to a bigger base. And, you know, I think that's what separates the top end guys. You know, they're able to train so much more and have so much more time like to put towards it. So
Sweet. So yeah, I know we touched a little bit on your first year as a pro, but I'd like to hear a little bit more about it because especially, you know, you have a different perspective here where most people I've talked with have really focused on, you know, doing their pro races where you're still focusing a lot on the collegiate races. So you know, I would love to hear a little bit more about, you know, what all that entails, you know, what that race schedule looked like through the year.
so you want me to touch on like currently what the race schedule is?
Well, so yeah, we can talk about upcoming race schedule and also just like that first year, since they'll kind of tie together as collegiate racing. But I'd love to kind of share that experience of the difference between like pro racing and the collegiate racing that you're still doing here.
Yeah, sure. I mean, kind of like I said, I've only raced Boulder 70.3 as one professional race, and I knew like a 70.3 is not kind of in my cards right now. Is where I'm going to be most competitive. I'd like to do some draft legal racing come this summer. But yeah, first year of racing professional, it's like last year, I guess we had Lake Havasu try, which we're about to do again in about 2 weeks or so. That's in border of Lake Havasu, Arizona, and California, and that's our collegiate conference race for the Mountain West Conference. That'll be a super fun one, and that's 1 month prior to Collegiate Nationals, which is in Lake Lanier, Georgia, about an hour north of Atlanta. And that's kind of been my main focus. Like last year, that was the main race on the year, and this year it's pretty much the same thing at this point. Like I haven't thought really too far beyond that this year, just because I want to, do well at this collegiate race and then find a full-time job that will allow me to keep training in public health. But yeah, so last year is pretty much the same thing, collegiate nats. Then took a break and I coach a kids swim team over summer. So working a bunch. Yeah, super fun. I love, it's funny for not being, the background in swimmers. Like kids ask me like, oh, what did you swim when you were 8 years old? I'm like, I didn't. I swam at the beach. I surfed. But, yeah, I wasn't like a swimmer. So it's been super fun to, learn the technical side of swimming too. Let's see. So Boulder 70.3, that was in August. Then took a little break after that. This past year, did something super fun. I did a 10-kilometer swim, which in and of itself isn't like that crazy. I think for like some triathletes that don't have the swim background, they'd be like, that's nuts. But I've done a lot of pretty long swims. We can talk about that more in a sec. But so I did this swim, but I did it as an IM. So 2.5K of each stroke, which is it's hard to describe that, especially like to someone who's not, like a pool swimmer, like how much fly back and breast that is.
That's so much. That's so much.
Yeah.
Back, breast, free. I get like, all that, but doing that as a fly, hard no.
It's pretty funny. So like actually the fly was like probably the second easiest. Like
really?
Free being easiest, but fly was the first, Yeah, like when you do open water fly, you're able just to like reach and stretch out long. And it's like if you're breathing every stroke on fly, like you can just keep your stroke long and glide, and you're working hard enough that like your body is able to produce like heat at the temperature of this swim. So it's like it wasn't that bad. I was like, oh, I could have kept going for fly. It was back and breast that I was like just dying in my grave.
Frick is wrong with you? 2.5 fly sounds so awful. Oh my gosh, like that sounds terrible.
Yeah, it was definitely rough, but
well, congratulations on that first.
Yeah,
I've done a 10K swim before, and like it was pretty brutal. It was long, it was fun, but like it was freestyle and breaststroke and a little bit of back here and there. But to do that as like an IM, that's bonkers. That's next level. You mentioned that you had some other like long swims that you wanted to talk about too.
Sure, yeah. So like kind of note to that swim though, like the fly wasn't like the strokes themselves weren't the hardest. It was like the temperature. It was at it's here in Fort Collins in September, up at 1,000 feet where Fort Collins is. So
Mhm.
the water at this point is pretty chilly. I think the water temp that day was like low 60s, 64 maybe.
Ooh.
I don't know, 65, mid 60s. But the air temp was also, in the 30s. So like to keep my body like producing enough heat, I weigh probably like 140-ish. And to keep your body producing heat for that long of a swim is just so challenging. And like especially swimming back and breast where they're a little more easygoing strokes.
Yeah.
Like the hardest battle was, not going hypothermic and like keeping the body warm enough to, keep swimming. Like that's kind of what I
Yeah.
mean. Like the fly was definitely tough, but I was working hard enough on the fly as the first, sequence of the IM, like, doing a mile and a half of fly straight. Like I was able to keep my body warm for, the first hour, but then I just remember like as soon as I rolled to my back and started doing backstroke, at the 2.5K marker, like it was just so rough. I just, keeping the body warm was the biggest challenge by far.
How do you feel for something like
And then
that?
like, I mean, it's just hard. Like you just have to train it, and put in the time with the swim. And that's what's funny. Like I was mentioning, swimming at the professional level, like I did pretty well in the swim at Boulder 70.3. And it, you know, to be able like to go jump in a horse like the 10K and do it IM, it kind of speaks to that, like how
Yeah.
much I was swimming last
Yeah,
summer
that
to
speaks a
prep for
lot.
that race. Um, yeah, for sure. Um, it's hard to like really train for something like that. Like I didn't anticipate how much like breaststroke would be, how tough that would be. Like I've never trained to swim, 75 minutes straight of breaststroke after 2 hours of previously swimming. It's like
Yeah,
it's
that's
hard to
not
put yourself
standard
in those
training.
scenarios, but yeah, so that's been a fun one. I'm super stoked to have complete that, but that's
Yeah.
definitely a one and done. Like after that, I was like, yeah, I have no desire to, do a 10K IM ever again.
Yeah. I think it lagged out there, but I asked, how do you fuel during that? Like during a 10K open water swim, like how do you fuel? How do you get food? How do you like what do you drink? Like all that stuff for it? Or did you just say like screw it, I'm going straight through?
No,
Yeah.
oh no, definitely feeling like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean
Okay, good. I was gonna
drinking
say
so
that.
much. Yeah. One of my teammates on the CSU team, he was a kayaker for me. You have to have like a paddler support to do
Yeah.
this swim in the race. And I mean, we're on like a 30-minute interval of like eating or drinking. And so I actually did the swim the year before, just freestyle, and like had, wanted to swim as fast as I possibly could. So we had a good system of tying a rope to a water bottle. And then at like the 30-minute marker, he would just wave the bottle. So I knew it was coming and he would throw it in front of me. I would just swim to it. Basically, like take a drink, kick on my back, and then drop the bottle. I think I had like 2 Morton packets per bottle. So like a pretty
Ooh,
concentrated, if you're
yeah.
familiar with that is. It's like
Yeah.
very heavy.
Yeah, that's my
Um,
go-to fuel.
in these like cold water swims, you just can't. Yeah, I love it too. It's good. It's expensive, but I definitely enjoy it. But
Yeah.
these cold water swims, like you don't have the I guess your jaw can't like chew very well when you're, at like sub
Yeah, that
65
makes
without a
sense.
wetsuit. Yeah, I
Yeah.
should say both these swims were no wetsuit. They were so like in water that cold, you gotta just make do with liquids pretty much. Like, fingers aren't working to be able to
Yeah.
tear gel and whatnot. So yeah, we just did Morton mix in the bottles. Same thing the next year for the 10K IM, but I did like have a Cliff Bar, I think. I don't remember exactly what I had, but a few solid foods because I was like 2 hours and 40 minutes for the 10K free, and then just over 4 hours for the 10K IM. So quite a bit slower.
Yeah. Well, reasonably so too. Doing those other 3 strokes is going to be significantly slow. God, to freaking fly during. Oh my God, I'm not going to be able to get over that for a while. But that's freaking awesome. I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah, sometimes it's fun to just go
it's
out
definitely
and do
worth
some stupid
trying.
races.
Yeah, I think that like that definitely speaks to, my whole experience in tri. Like I don't want to, take this too seriously. And
Yeah.
I always have said to my, friends, like, it's great to like focus on one kind of racing if you're doing like long course or short course. But I also want to be, the athlete that can go race like a draft legal sprint one weekend and do well in it. And then like the next, like followed up with some like crazy adventure race.
Yep.
Like, I don't think I need to subscribe to one style of racing. Like, I think it's just more fun, and I'm going to get the most out of myself if I just don't take it too seriously and just chase whatever's fun at the time.
Yeah, I 100% support that, and I'm currently pursuing my pro card, but I hope to be able to do that as well. There's definitely a balance of making sure that you're enjoying what you're doing and making sure you're doing it for the right reasons and having fun, because otherwise, it's not worth doing it if you're not going to enjoy it. Or if you're going to take yourself too seriously doing it. So yeah, I 100% support that. And I will be looking forward to seeing you racing both in the triathlon area as well as doing your adventure and wild other races. And maybe I'll even come join you for some fun, stupid ones.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love that.
Well, is there anything else like triathlon specific that you'd like to share with anybody, or especially any advice for rising athletes, people new to the sport, looking to get their pro cards? Just anything that you'd like to share with them, or if you have any mottos that you kind of live by, that would be yeah, would love for you to share those kind of last few things as we wrap up here.
For sure. Yeah. I'll share like kind of one more story of a good, a fun like adventure challenge I did back in 2020, and it kind of speaks to like not having this swim background. I think a lot of like people entering tri, they're like very intimidated by one of the sports, whether it be swimming or running, like whatever their background wasn't in. And for me, like I wasn't a swimmer, so I knew like that's going to be my Achilles heel. um so I was racing 2020. I did Claremont Draft Legal, another one of those EDR races where they give top few finishers their pro card. Um, and prior to that race, like I was in such good run and bike shape. And at the time, like relative to where I was swimming pretty well too. But I think I had the expectation just to go in there and kill it and, be up front competing. And that certainly wasn't the case. Like I was just so far behind and gassed from the swim that I did not bike or run, not even close to like where I was racing at the time. I think I raced an 8K like 2 weeks prior to that and was like, 520 pace. And, then I'm running whatever, like 550, 540 off the bike at Claremont. So it's like, I just knew if I was going to keep chasing tri like and be competitive at, the elite level, like I would have to put in a ton of work in the swim, to make up for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that race was like the first weekend in March. And then the next weekend of 2020, March, COVID hit. And basically the whole, country shut down. So like pool access was, nowhere. You can't get in the pool anywhere. But I had a few friends that were training for some super long swims like the English Channel or around Manhattan. Marathon swimmers, they, do some super crazy stuff. And
yeah, that's bonkers.
they would invite me out to the beach, and the beach isn't closed during COVID. So I went from swimming like 3 days a week with a master's group, so maybe 10K a week, to pretty much overnight started doing like 30K a week. And I would go out there and swim like 5K every time we would go swim, and swimming 5-6 days a week, and it just quickly added up.
Yeah.
Did so many like 10K swims during that time, and I think like that's what I needed. And it wasn't even like intentional. Like I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to do some crazy like swim block and just focus on that. It just seemed natural. Like there wasn't any races on the schedule because of COVID. And I knew like, the pools were closed. So I was just going to go swim with these friends, at the beach in Tampa Bay. During that time, like my buddy, his name's Paul from Tampa, Florida, he was, we would just seek out these like fun adventure swims all over like Tampa Bay. And I was telling him about my hometown in Delaware and wanted to do this swim from Cape May, New Jersey, the southern tip of Jersey, to the point of Delaware, Cape Henlopen, where I'm from. And I had a buddy, he's actually a riverboat pilot in Delaware, a family friend of ours, who, I knew would be capable of taking us across there. And I called him like, I think it was May or April, was like, hey, is this even possible? Like, you think we could swim this? And he was like, yeah, like, I think it was like 11 and a half miles point to point across like the ferry route. And we were like, okay, well, now we have something to train for. So, I mean, we just kept the swim training up. And I think I spent like, like I said, 4 months of swimming 30K a week. I mean, that's probably what I think would be comparable to like, a collegiate swimmer, and I mean, that's often what separates, the best swimmers from, guys that are like mid-pack, whatever, even in the pro races, if you don't have that strong swim background of, 30, K a week, whatever the distance is, like, it's going to be tough to make that up. But, yeah, I did that swim in the middle of July of 2020 and it ended up like the way you have to swim it is like think of it as swimming into a headwind for the first half because the tide has to come in and then the tide will flip and then you're with the tide coming down. It's impossible to just time it to swim the whole thing with the tide. You'll never get across the bay. It just, the way it works is, if you're moving at, I think it was like 2 knots or whatever, which is like boating speed, that's equivalent to like 130-ish per 100 yard. If you're swimming about that pace, which was our open water pace at the time for, swim of this distance, like you just have to kind of fight the current for the first half and then you're with the current the second half. So it ended up being 14 and a quarter, so 14.25 miles that I completed in 6.5 hours.
Oh my God, that's
crossing
insane. Well, now I can see how your swim got, pretty up to par pretty quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I just remember, that March race in Claremont, like being so disappointed and knowing like deep down that, my swim's just not that strong. Like there's so many guys that are, just stronger swimmers and they're coming out of the water like more fresh. And I'm, coming out like redlining. So, I'm not going to be able to race at a high level unless I address that. And, fortunately enough, like COVID happened and it kind of just fell into my lap of, some fun challenge that I could work towards and, also grant me some fitness. So it was pretty cool to complete that. And then when I got back in the water, I moved out to Colorado end of August, pretty much after that swim or mid-August or so. When I got back in the water in Colorado sometime in September in the pool, it was like I was a new swimmer. It was like, okay, well now, holding 110, 115 in the pool is like super easy. And, 6 months before that, like, 120 felt hard in the pool. And, now I'm well under 110 and it's like, whatever, it's not that big.
That's awesome. Yeah, you definitely put in the work, put in the volume, and I'd say you up your swim game just a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think like if I had to give anyone advice coming into the try and wanting to, progress and race at an elite level, like, have fun and like work towards these like fun, for me, it's been like the adventure of, chasing like a challenge or doing something, a little differently that's really kept me engaged. And, that's maybe not the traditional path, but I think like as, someone who didn't have like the strong background in, swimming, and then stepped away from running for so long. Like, I think you just need like these fun, engaging goals to keep you excited about the sport. So I think that's like,
I think that's a great message to pass on to people. Again, just keep it fun, stay engaged, do it the way that you want to do it so that you love the sport and it doesn't, when you love it, it doesn't feel like as much work. I mean, if you're going to be good, it's still going to be putting in some work, but like you said, just finding a way to love it and stay engaged with it.
Yeah, exactly. I think if you can just keep it easy on yourself and still find a way to like work hard and surround yourself with, a great community. My coach has like I guess, saying of like iron sharpens iron. And that's like, what we live by. We all work hard together and, get strong together. So I think it's like speaks to a lot of truth. I'm certainly not like a solo athlete. Like, I love to train with, my friends in Colorado, and I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Well, that's awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on, for sharing your story. Wishing you the very best in this upcoming year. And again, looking forward to seeing you compete in all of your variety of types of races.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Zach, for having me.
If you enjoyed listening to Jake's story, make sure to show your support by following him in the links in the description below. Best way to do so is over on Instagram. Also, while you're down there, make sure to hit that like button and the notification bell so that you know when the next episode comes out. Again, thank you, Jake, for coming on. I wish you the very best in your athletic career, and I'll be making sure to follow you. With everyone else, happy training, good luck out there, and see you next time.